Hello everyone, welcome to LUKMAAN IAS. Today we are going to have the Hindu analysis of 9th April 2021. So let us see which are the important articles in today's The Hindu newspaper. Yes, these are the important articles. We have segregated them for mains purpose and for prelims purpose. Accordingly, we are going to take input here. Let us first take overview of these articles. For mains related articles, plow to plate handheld by the Indian state. So the context of the article here, it is talking about the problems or the issues that are facing the farming sector, and at the same time it is talking about the agriculture marketing reforms that are required and the need of government intervention or the public procurement program that government runs, the importance of that program it is talking about. So in GS3 paper, the agroeconomic part is there in the syllabus, and every year the questions are being asked. At the same time, this year it was in news because of the farm bills that are passed by the government. So surely we can expect some questions from agroeconomy part, GS3 paper. So we will discuss from that perspective in detail. Next, beyond zero sum. So the context of the article, the visit of the special envoy of climate by the US government, John Kerry is visiting India. So the context of the article is that visit and overall the requirement of we can say that the funds transfers and the technology transfers from developed countries to developing countries in the future that is required. So from GS3 paper environment perspective, we are going to take input here. Then specifically prelims related articles, Biden will restore credibility on climate change, says US envoy John Kerry. So he was talking to our Prime Minister, and in that there was mention of Green Climate Fund. So what was this Green Climate Fund? Basics about this Green Climate Fund we are going to understand from environment perspective here. Next, RBI is first purchased under GSAP 1.0 set for April 15. So under this GSAP program, RBI is going to conduct open market operations, OMOs. So basics about this economic concept, OMOs, how RBI influences the liquidity in the market through these operations, and the important monetary policy tool of the RBI. Okay, next, Yakshagana, art and culture perspective. So in that magazine page or the Friday review page, supplement to the Hindu newspaper on Friday, so important articles appear from art and culture perspective, important traditional, let's say, theatre art form, dance form, music forms. So that becomes important from GS part, art and culture sector. Okay, so basics about this Yakshagana art form. Then suspected African swine fever outbreak in Mizoram. So basics about this disease, particular disease, African swine fever, we are going to understand here from health and science perspective. Let us go into details of all these articles. First article, plow to plate handheld by the Indian state. So the article is talking about the need of government intervention in agriculture markets. So the article in first part specially discusses about the need of public procurement program, how it is important for farmers welfare, how it is important for consumer perspective also, and ensuring food security in the country. So as we know that since 1965, on the onset of Green Revolution and the establishment of institutions like Food Corporation of India and the starting of PDS program and the buffer stock maintenance by the government, how government intervention in agriculture market has resulted into farmers welfare, ensuring appropriate returns to the farmers produce and ensuring, let's say, subsidize food grain prices to the consumers, especially poor people in the society. And this is how India got food security in subsequent decades, we can say, after Green Revolution. Now at present also there are talks of reduced government intervention in the agriculture market and more privatization of agriculture market, especially after the government had enacted 3 bills last year, and we have seen the kind of farmers protests that are going on in Delhi and surrounding border areas, right? So that's why the issue is in news. We have to understand the nitty-gritties here. Okay, the first issue that we have to understand here is that due to many limiting factors, increasing returns to scale are very difficult to achieve in the farming sector. Right, now what are these limiting factors here in agriculture or farming sector? We can understand here like soil fertility, or we can say water availability, or if we are talking about the climate factors, then climate variability is there, or we can say that rainfall variability in different parts of the country. And because of that, what happens is there are always risks associated and there are always chances of crop failure. And because of that, we can say that the returns to scale is very difficult to achieve in farming sector. And that's why it brings the strong case for public investment in agriculture. Okay, the second argument that the writer is providing here, since demand for food crops is typically price inelastic, during the bumper crop, while prices fall, the resulting rise in demand is not enough to salvage farmers' income. That means the demand for food grains is typically price inelastic. Now, price inelasticity, it is the technical terms in economics. That means we have to understand that demand, whenever there is demand increase or decrease, it is not actually impacting the prices here. Okay, so there is a negative correlation we have, and because of that, what happens is whenever there is we know that almost 85% of Indian farmers are small and marginal farmers, and they do not have incentives or the capital to store these crops after food grains after harvesting, and that's why they immediately bring all those food grains to the market. And this is how the bulk of food grains are coming to the market at the same time, and because of that we can understand the supply is very high. However, the prices are falling because of the increase in supply, and therefore it is not providing enough incomes to the farmers because of that. Okay, so the poor consumers, on the other hand, unregulated markets for food grains mean that during a drought they starve or forced to buy very expensive food commodities hoarded by traders. Now this is again one of the important issue, especially in the smooth let's say movement of food grains in the agriculture markets or our economy. The problem is that illegal hoarding of food grains by the traders, and because of that what happens is whenever there is high demand of food grains, there is increase in those commodities, and because of that the poor people suffer here. They have to buy these food grains at higher prices, right? This is how it impacts the consumers also. At the same time, during such situation, the traders are acting as a money lenders and exploiting the farmers, right? So this is how the traders are acting as, let's say, credit extenders. At the same time, many let's say practices in rural areas are also linked with the caste system here, and landless rural laborers. All these are interlinked with each other in rural economy, and to some extent these traders are acting as a money lenders here, exploiting all the farmers in the informal way. So that's why there is need of public investment in agriculture sector, especially in agri markets, we can say that, right? So further, what we can do here as a way forward, what government can do, first thing you need to understand that the need to greatly expand basket of public procurement to include more crops, more regions, more farmers. Why we are saying that? Because what we have seen after Green Revolution is that the impact of Green Revolution is skewed towards certain crops, skewed towards certain, let's say, farmers, at the same time skewed towards certain regions. How? Skewed towards certain crops. That means only two crops are, let's say, given importance, that is rice and wheat. Even government, while announcing MSP, focuses more on announcing these two MSP for these two crops. Politically motivated, let's say, decisions are taken. However, we have to understand that the other crops are not given that much importance, especially the millets, other millets and pulses, okay, oil seeds and pulses. So more crops should be included in public procurement. Next aspect, you have to understand that largely these public procurement, the kind of farmers, large farmers, or we can say that those having the large land holdings, especially Punjab and Haryana, those farmers are largely involved in let's say public procurement of these food grains, especially wheat and rice. While the other farmers in eastern India or southern India, they are not even aware of MSP. They immediately sell their produce in the nearby market without having knowledge about the public procurement program. This is the situation we can understand. And region wise, only western UP, Punjab and Haryana region has, let's say, progressed in this public procurement program, while the other regions, like especially eastern India, which is having the potential but still it is not realized, we can understand here that that should be let's say moving towards those regions also, public procurement program. Right. Along with that, the procurement must be local and follow logic of regional agroecology. So there is the concept of agroecological zones and climatological zones, especially those who are having geography optional subject, they may be knowing about that. Right. So India is divided into different 15 agroclimatic zones and 20 agroecological zones, and the crops should be grown according to these, let's say, suggested agroecological and climatological zones in those regions, so that there is less pressure on the resources like soil, water and overall nutrients that are to be supported to grow these crops. Right. Along with that, the diverse cropping pattern should be adopted, and the pulses and millets, which are also being called as the nutri-cereals now, rich in nutrients, they should be growing because they are less water thirsty as compared to rice, sugarcane, which are more water thirsty crops and being favored by the farmers in recent times. Okay, so there should be diversification of cropping patterns, right? And these cropping patterns should align to agroecological zones and agroclimatological zones. Along with that, this public procurement program, we are focusing on local procurement, this should be linked with Anganwadi supplement program and school midday meal programs. Why? Because this will ensure that whatever the farmers are producing, they are immediately getting the returns, their market is being diversified. Along with that, the students, or we can say that children, and their nutrition objectives, nutritional security is being achieved at the local level itself. Right? This is how we have to understand and write in our mains examination also. Next, we have to understand network of mandis needs to be greatly expanded. At present, there are around 4,500 mandis in the country, and in those mandis, only 70% of the farm produce passes through mandis. Other produce is sold outside these mandis. Okay, so rather than weakening and dismantling of these mandis, we need to let's say make their functioning more transparent and farmer friendly. So this can be the way forward in the end, or conclusion as part question to the APMC reforms or the farm laws which are in news. You can talk about or discuss in this manner what kind of question we can expect here. Explain the importance of public procurement program of the food grains in India. Do you think that state intervention in agri markets is obstructing growth in agriculture sector, or obstruction in the growth of agriculture sector? So you have to give the arguments here, right? So Yes, what you should focus here is that those interventions should be for more crops, more regions and more farmers. You should focus on the renewed aspects of public intervention, state intervention in agriculture markets. Okay, so GS3 paper agroeconomy part, you can take input here. Next, beyond zero sum. Yes, so from environment perspective, editorial page number 6, the article is having context of Mr. John Kerry's visit, special presidential envoy for climate. So he visited India and met with our finance minister, external affairs minister as well as prime minister, and during discussions there were, let's say, talks about India should increase its climate ambitions, focusing on the deadline for achieving the net zero emissions in India. Along with that, there will be support from US to India's climate mitigation and adaptation programs, technology transfers and fundings. Okay, so this is how the article is having context. So in first part of the article, some of the facts are mentioned and the concerns by the developed countries and underdeveloped countries towards India. How? You can see here that for the developed world, India presents a study in contrast. How study in contrast? That means India is one of the largest emitter at the country level. Overall emitter, we can say that in the world, in top 5, it is 4th largest emitter. First is USA, second China, third is European Union, 4th is India. So though we can understand only 3% of the contribution, overall contribution of the world is from India. However, this is very much significant. However, we can understand here that though we are contributing more, still India is having many poor people, and for them energy security is required, and the development is very much important here for them. Okay, so that's why such emissions will be continued in future also, so that there is increase in standard of life of those people. Second aspect, from the underdeveloped countries perspective, India is one of the largest emitter now, and they will be let's say facing the major, let's say, result of climate change, impact of climate change. If we are talking about the island nations, then island nations will be facing the problem of submergence due to sea level rise, right? Or such other underdeveloped countries which do not have the funding for climate adaptation and mitigation practices or projects here. Okay, so they will be at the receiving end, and therefore they will be, let's say, asking India to reduce its contributions, or we can say emissions here. So there is a growing pressure on India to join other such big economies to target for net zero emissions, like US have committed or EU have committed, US, China, even China has committed that these countries by 2050, around the, let's say, mid 21st century, they want to achieve this net zero emissions target, and therefore it is being said that India should also have such a deadline. Okay, the pressure is put by those countries including US here. So even Mr. Kerry sought to explore the possibility of raising national ambition with the assurance that US would support such roadmap in future. Okay, so this is good thing, and therefore we have to understand that developed countries, if we have to achieve the net zero emissions in future, developed countries should be reducing their emissions at the faster rate and support developing countries in terms of fund transfers and technology transfers. This is how we have to understand. At the same time, India cannot ignore the impact of its own projects. Okay, so such decisions, for example, the forest clearance for infrastructure projects, along with that many such decisions in last year taken, having the huge impact on the environment. For example, the center saw it to pass press ahead with environmental clearances to the projects that have serious impact, negative impact on environment. Also, there was draft EIA notification 2020 notification, which focused on post facto let's say approval for EIA to the projects. Okay, so this have impact on the environment, right? Along with that, there is rising fuel prices and the government is not reducing the taxation. Overall, it is having the impact on poor people due to inflationary trends created by the rising in input cost due to high fuel prices. So what should be the way forward here? India should come up with a domestic climate plan that explains to the citizen how it will bring the green development in this decade, specifying target by sector for each year, right? So there should be a broad domestic climate plan. It will convey the right message at the international level. Taxing luxury emissions, whether it's car, air conditioning, big properties or aviation, for specified green development outcomes will send the convincing message at international level, right? So this should be the policy initiatives by the government towards achieving the net zero emissions in near future. Along with that, the intended nationally determined contributions that we are going to achieve under Paris Agreement. So in that direction also these steps will be beneficial. So GS3 paper environment section, you can take input here. Again, so now prelims related developments, Green Climate Fund. So the mention of this Green Climate Fund was there. Mr. Kerry visited Prime Minister and he said that a promise to fulfill Washington's earlier commitments towards developing countries, including $3 billion contribution to Green Climate Fund. Now this is the good development that we are having in the climate negotiations and support to developing countries by developed countries. So Green Climate Fund, actually this was established in 2010 within the framework of UNFCCC. Basically it is the finance mechanism of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, right? So this finance mechanism here, developing countries will contribute to this fund, and there is target under this fund of $100 billion by 2020. Surely it is not achieved yet, but this was ambitious target put forward by these countries, and developed countries who are funding to this fund, ultimately the fund will be used for the adaptation and mitigation projects in developing countries. Okay, so this is based in Incheon, South Korea. Okay, and it is governed by a board of 24 members and supported by a secretariat. So in India, NABARD has been accredited by GCF as the first entity for sourcing financial resources from GCF. Okay, so there can be question in prelims examination. You need to know about GCF, Green Climate Fund. Okay, next. So RBI's first purchase under GSAP 1.0 set for April 15. So RBI has decided to conduct open market operations. Okay, so open market operations of the government under this GSAP program, Government Security Acquisition Program, full form. Okay, under this program the RBI conducts the open market operations and buys and sells these government securities and treasury bills in the primary market here. Okay, now the significance of this particular step is that the selling and buying of these government bonds results into changes in liquidity situation. This is important monetary tool of RBI. Okay, so the basics about open market operations. This is done by RBI through commercial banks Okay, there is no direct involvement of RBI dealing with public, rather it is conducted through commercial banks. Now, this is done to regulate the money supply in the economy. So, buying and selling of the government securities and T-bills, treasury bills by RBI. Now, what happens when the RBI sells this particular government securities in the market? Then there is removing of money from the market. Okay, and when RBI purchases all these bonds and government securities from the market, then what happens is there is increase in money supply in the market. So this is how we have to understand, when RBI wants to increase in money supply in the economy, it purchases the government securities and it sells government securities to suck out liquidity from the system. So the monetary policy tool with the government here. Okay, so open market operations, there can be question in your prelims examination regarding OMOs. So practice prelims question, consider the following statements about OMOs. Let us try to solve this. First, they are carried out by RBI through commercial banks. Correct statement. It involves sale and purchase of government securities and treasury bills. Yes, this is also correct statement. When RBI wants to increase the money supply in the economy, it sells the government securities. So when the RBI wants to increase the money supply, there should be buying of government securities and not selling of securities. Why? Because you can see here, suppose this is RBI, this is market. Now what happens is selling and buying of these government securities. When there is a selling of government securities, then what happens is, in turn, the money from the market is taken back by RBI. There is less liquidity now. When the government securities are bought back by the RBI, then it has to fuel the market with some money back here in the market. So there is increase in the money supply in the market. This is how you need to understand the concept. So that's why it is incorrect statement. Answer should be 1 and 2. Okay. Yes. Next. So on page number 1 of the supplement in today's The Hindu newspaper, it is talking about the Yakshagana theatre form from the Karnataka. You can see here the teller of the tales, acclaimed performer, tells the story of how Yakshagana is adapting to modern times. So the basics about this art form. Yes, Yakshagana is the traditional theatre form of Karnataka. First thing you need to remember. Now literally means Gana, song, and Yaksha, nature or spirit. It is strongly influenced by Vaishnava Bhakti movement. Okay, so Vaishnava Bhakti movement, and it draws the inspiration or the stories from Ramayana, Mahabharata and such Hindu epics that we have. Okay, it is performed with massive headgears, elaborative facial makeups, vibrant costumes and ornaments. So that means you can see here in the photograph, massive headgears, elaborative costumes and makeups, ornaments. And it is traditionally recited in the Kannada but also performed in Malayalam sometimes. Percussion instruments are used while performance. At the same time, it is traditionally presented from dusk to dawn. This is how the Yakshagana traditional theatre from Karnataka. So art and culture part. So suspected African swine fever outbreak in Mizoram. So basics about African swine fever. Many times it is in news because of such localized outbreaks. Actually it is not a threat to human because humans are not susceptible to African swine fever virus. However, it can spread to the members of pig family through direct or indirect contact. Okay, there is virus which spreads this particular virus. It is spreading easily between the pigs by direct or indirect contact, and some species of ticks, they act as a vector to transmit this virus. Blood sucking flies and insects also probably responsible for spread of this virus. Okay, so African swine fever, it is highly contagious viral disease of pigs. Okay, so the basics about the basic information about this African swine fever. Important captions and quotations. Lastly, we can understand here GS3 paper or essay on agriculture sector we can expect this year. Actually we are expecting the essay this year on the farming sector because of the farm laws and the farm protests that are going on, but yes, surely UPSC is unpredictable, they can ask next year. So GS3 paper, agroeconomy part, essay paper, farming sector, we can expect such essay topic also. And here from climate change part, you can surely use this argument here. There can be essay on climate change, there can be question in GS3 paper also. Okay, so you can understand and use these captions here. Okay, yes, so these were important articles from today's The Hindu newspaper. If you understood the analysis that we have done here, try to take input accordingly for prelims as well as mains examination. And for further information related to editorial discussion classes or ED classes, wherein in-depth analysis of mains related issues and articles is done by Ansari Sir and team, you can contact LUKMAAN IAS. Thank you.